Hello students, in today's lecture we will see Metamorphoses Book 4, and today we are going to discuss the story of daughters of Menes and Perismus and Thisbe part 1. So here Ovid says that all the women of Thebes start rejoicing the arrival of Bacchus, as we had seen in the previous book, that is book 3, where we had seen that how finally Bacchus punishes Pentheus, where Pentheus is finally murdered or killed by his own mother, and he is torn from limb to limb as a result of his disregard for Bacchus. So just because of that, now the Theban women take the death of Pentheus as a warning and become even more devoted to the god Bacchus. In fact, all of them join these worshippers except for the daughters of Menes, a citizen of the town. Here, in Ovid's line, or what he had said or written in the Metamorphoses, he says, "Only handful of women rejected the revels of Bacchus. One was Alceto, Menes' daughter, foolhardy enough to deny that the god was Jupiter's son, and her impious sister shared wicked belief. Now orders had come from the priest for a solemn festival. Ladies serving women were therefore excused from their household duties." That means if they were doing any sort of work, then they will be excused from that work or the duties, because now they have to celebrate Bacchus or the god Bacchus. But the Menes' daughter do not want to, or they do not recognize Bacchus as a god. Now here the rest of the women say that, "Lord, in your gentle mercy be with us," because they are scared of the threat or the ill effect of not regarding Bacchus as God. So that's why they just worship him and say that, "Lord, in your gentle mercy be with us." The Theban women prayed as they duly worshipped. Only the daughters of Menes stayed indoors and marred the feast with their untoward housecraft, drawing the wool into thread and twisting the strands with their thumbs, or moving close to the loom and keeping their servants occupied. So here the rest of the women are rejoicing and they are celebrating this festival of Bacchus. When the other women are celebrating, Menes' daughters stay home and they continue to weave. They do this because their favorite goddess or goddesses is Minerva, the goddess of weaving. So here, to pass their time, they finally decide to tell the stories. Here they say, "But why don't we also relieve the toil of our hands by telling stories?" Then she pondered which of the many tales that she knew was the best one to choose. Or should she relate the tale of the mulberry tree, which used to produce white fruit, but was strained with blood and came to burgeon with dark red berries? This was the story she chose because it was less familiar. And finally, she comes to a conclusion that she has to tell the story of mulberry, that how it flourished or how started producing red fruit, because earlier it was believed that it used to produce only white fruits. So she decides, Menes' daughter, one of the Menes' daughter decides to tell this story because she considered it to be less familiar. And now she starts telling the story of Perimus and Thisbe. Now the story goes on like this. The tale of Perismus, known as youth of exceptional beauty. Here Perimus is considered to be the youth who had exceptional beauty, and his appearance was talked about by everyone whoever used to see him. And Thisbe, by far the loveliest maiden in all the East. And if you look at all the females of the East, then you will find no one as beautiful as Thisbe. These are the words of Ovid, and this is how he describes the beauty and looks of Perimus and Thisbe. They used to live in adjoining states. Here is the description of Ovid. They lived on adjoining states of the lofty city of Babylon, ringed as they tell with its wall of brick by Queen Semiramis. Now here he says that want to begin the tell the tale of Perismus and Thisbe. The story begins by describing where they used to live. They used to live in Babylon. In fact, they lived right next to each other, and they grew up. They gradually grew up slowly loving each other, but no one in the family knew that they were in love with each other. And there was a huge wall that used to divide the walls of the two states in which they used to live. So eventually they decide they wanted to be married, but their parents forbade it. They did not want them to get married. So this just made them love each other even more. Now here the walls that divided the two states had tiny holes. A cranny formed long ago at the time of partition was built. Now, in the course of the years, this imperfection was never been noticed. But what is not sensed by love? The lovesick pair were first to find it and used to channel their whispered endearments in safety. So, like I said, that there used to be huge wall in between the two states where Thisbe and Peresmus lived. So there was a crack in the wall, or there was tiny this cranny in the wall, which was formed, or which was like made while the construction was done of the wall. So nobody was aware of this cranny which was there in the wall, but obviously nothing can be, or nothing can remain hidden from the love-lorn hearts. So here Thisbe and Peresmus finally find that there is a crack between, there is a crack in this wall, and they start interacting with each other through this cranny or this hole. But it is too, thin that they could hardly see each other or sense each other. But yes, there is a feeling in their heart that the lover is on the other side of the wall. So they used to continue to come there or near the wall and used to feel each other through the wall. So the wall was not a thin wall, it was a thick wall. But yes, the feeling was there that the lover is on the other side of the wall. Now, the two neighboring houses shared a wall, which was, there was a crack. So through these cracks, the lovers could communicate. They longed to be able to join together and wished that the wall did not separate them at all. Finally, they just used to pray at night that somehow this wall could disappear from in between them. So finally, after this long courtship or longing for each other, they decide to run away together. So they would, they decide they would each slip out of their houses by night. Then they would make their way separately to the tomb of men named Ninus, which was constructed outside the city. So finally, they decide that they will finally meet there. So in the lines of Ovid, this time after singing their tale of woe, they made a decision. When all was quiet that night, they would try to elude their guards and steal out of doors. In case they got lost on their journey out in the open country, their rendezvous would be Ninus's tomb. The plan was agreed. So finally they decide for a rendezvous where they will finally meet, and the rendezvous is going to be the Ninus's tomb. So because the city outside is very wide, so if they get lost and they won't be able to find each other anywhere else, then finally they will meet at the Ninus's tomb. So there they would find they would hide underneath a mulberry tree that grew besides the tomb. So that was a decision, or that was an agreement between Peresmus and Thisbe. So they decide to meet under this mulberry tree. So finally, here again in the lines of Ovid, Peresmus stole out later and came on the scene to observe. So what happens? Thisbe made it to the tomb first, and finally when they were moving out of the house, Thisbe finally reaches the tomb first, and she waits for Peresmus near the tomb. But while she is waiting for Peresmus, she sees a lioness coming by. The lioness had recently killed some oxen and had a bloody snout. So Thisbe ran away. Seeing the lioness coming near her, she runs away from that place and drops, while she is dropping, she drops her shawl in the process. That means while she is in haste, she is in that rush, she drops her shawl. So after, the lion, who was actually not coming near Thisbe, or the lioness, Thisbe was not the target of lioness, but the lioness was actually coming to drink the water from the stream. So after drinking the water from the stream, the lioness came over and started tearing up the shawl for no particular reason. So when the lioness, after drinking the water, comes back, the lioness sees that shawl dropped on the way and starts tearing the shawl for no particular reason. And Thisbe also is obviously not aware that she has dropped the shawl. And later on, it is Peresmus who arrives at that spot. After tearing the shawl, the lioness also disappears or moves away to the inside the jungle. And here Pyrrhusmus reaches that place and finds that the shawl has been torn by Linus. Pyrrhusmus stole out later and came on the scene to observe the unmistakable tracks of the wild beast there in the deep dust. At once he grew deadly pale, but when he had also discovered the blood-drenched clock, he exclaimed, "One night shall ruin two lovers." That means this one night is going to ruin the two lovers, because today we had decided to meet each other, but this night has ruined all the dreams that we had for each other, all the feelings that we had for each other, all the desire that we had for each other, because she had been, or he presumed, Pyrrhusmus presumed that Thisbe has been killed by Linus. Now Pyrrhusmus got there and saw that Linus has already torn the shawl, and there was blood on its jaws. So it was chewing on Thisbe's shawl, and he assumed the worst, because he obviously assumed that maybe he has already eaten up Thisbe and now he's chewing the shawl of Thisbe. So he was overcome with too much of grief, and he sat down beneath the mulberry tree and committed suicide by stabbing himself, because he considered, or he feels, that there is no use for him to live like this without Thisbe or his beloved. So he stabs himself under the mulberry tree. So his blood spurted all over the berries and sank down to the roots. That is why, or this is the reason why, the white fruits turn red. So the reason why the berries which used to be white now are red. Now finally, here is the line of Ovid. Splashed by the blood, the fruit on the mulberry tree was dyed. The red-black color, the roots were likewise sodden below, and tinged the hanging berries above with a purplish hue. The fruit of the mulberry tree, when it ripens, is now dark red, and the ashes surviving the funeral pyre are at rest in the same urn. So that means when the blood of Pyrrhusmus sips into the root of the mulberry tree, the fruits start turning reddish in color. Now here, at this point, Thisbe came back to the tomb and found her lover bleeding to death. Pyrrhusmus looked up into her eyes, recognized her, and then died, because finally he realizes that it is his beloved, and actually she is not dead. So Thisbe prayed that she and he would be given the same grave. That means she did not want to live without Pyrrhusmus, and she too killed herself. Then she stabbed herself to death with Pyrrhusmus's knife, the same knife which was used by Pyrrhusmus, and then killed herself as well. Now this is the end of the story of Pyrrhusmus and Thisbe. So that is all for today's lecture. Thank you all.